Body and brain do change as we age. For example, hormones change. Women are very familiar with menopause. Men go through andropause. Unfortunately, Chris, as we age, our testosterone decreases.
A little bit about Robert Love. He's got 162,000 followers on Instagram, 1.4 million followers on TikTok. He studied at the University of Texas. His description was just this simple. I am a neuroscientist and I specialize in helping people prevent Alzheimer's disease with science.
If we don't use our brain, it will naturally shrink as we age. The times of the greatest decrease in neurogenesis, do you know when there are? There's two of them. So regular exercise basically reduces your risk equivalent to the worst genetic risk. That's a big darn deal. So exercise alone can negate the negative impact of genetics. And this is really cool, Chris, for those concerned about Alzheimer's disease.
Hi, my name is Chris Burris. I'm a longevity expert and the chief scientist at a lab focused on a longevity molecule. My primary focus is to help people live longer and better lives with science. Make sure to subscribe and share so you and your friends can live longer and better. Well, actually, so you and your friends can live beyond the norms.
Hi, and welcome to the next talk on the Uncovering the Secrets of Longevity Summit, Live Beyond the Norms. I'm here on this particular talk with Dr. Robert Love. We're talking how to prevent the scariest disease, and that's actually from the research I did, Alzheimer's. So a little bit about Robert Love. He gave me such a simple sentence. I did some digging. He's got 162,000 followers on Instagram. He studied at the University of Texas. If you're from Texas, you know that can be wonderful and controversial, depending on where you went. Not controversial, but like I love the back and forth that goes between Texas universities. But his description was just this simple. I am a neuroscientist and I specialize in helping people prevent Alzheimer's disease with science. I think that's amazing. A little bit more digging shows 1.4 million followers on TikTok. Well done. And it's 8.9 million likes. That is not easy to achieve. My wife is actually growing her TikTok and doing quite well. And she, I think, hit the 1 million likes recently. You're at 8.9. I guess that means you're likable. Is that? Robert, Dr. Robert,
hungry for the science.
Welcome to the talk, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, Chris. Thank you for squeezing me in. I know we had some scheduling conflicts. I really appreciate you being flexible and finding time that works.
Yeah, no, I really wanted to get you in on this summit. I felt it was really important. You know, if you look at, I did some kind of background research, and one source says Alzheimer's is number 5 on the list of the most deadliest diseases. You really have this between cancer is number 2, heart disease number 1. And people's fear level of Alzheimer's and cancer, depending on actually age, this looks to be like an age-dependent variable. At a younger age, 31% of people are more afraid of Alzheimer's and 41% are more afraid of cancer. As you get to over 60, it's 35% of people are more afraid of Alzheimer's than cancer. That comes in at 25%. So I think, you know, when, that title, The Scariest Disease, really is appropriate. So I wanted to get you in. And before we really kind of dive into the meat, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to the point of being an Alzheimer's expert.
Yeah, terrific. I'd love to do that. And then I'd love to share with you where I am right now, because it's really interesting. It's related to longevity and anti-aging. So I went to grad school in cognitive psychology, and I left working with ADHD. So I myself have ADHD, attention deficit disorder. And so those were my clients. And about 5 years ago, I came home to Cincinnati, Ohio, which is where my parents live. And I was going to be there to help my mother recover from back surgery. It was at this time that I noticed that my parents had impaired memory. I was very concerned. I talked to my siblings about it, and I just noticed they weren't all there. They were, at least the way that I remembered them. And both of my parents have dementia in their family's history. My dad, his dad had Alzheimer's disease, and then my mother, his dad had dementia unspecified. It might be classified as Alzheimer's disease. We now think it was due to heavy metals. He was a dry cleaner, and the toxins from the dry cleaning we think damaged his brain. So I was very concerned, and I started looking through their food. I noticed there's a lot of sugar and there's a lot of chocolate. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to switch my focus from ADHD to dementia prevention for my family. This is really important. So many people need this. And so that was 5 years ago. And so for the last 5 years, I've been digging into the research. I've been doing some of my own research. I started out actually making healthy chocolate. I thought this was the answer to Alzheimer's disease. So chocolate's great for the brain. Chocolate improves memory in double-blind, placebo-controlled studies. Chocolate improves something called angiogenesis. That's the growth of new blood vessels. So this can be helpful with stroke. Chocolate's good for the immune system. Chocolate's great. It's so many great benefits. So I got really high quality chocolate and I added all the brain healthy ingredients I could possibly imagine. I added matcha, which is like green tea on steroids. I added lion's mane mushroom. I added cinnamon. I added curcumin. I added black pepper. I added all these things to try to solve the problem of Alzheimer's disease, basically with chocolate. I said, if everyone's going to eat my chocolate, that would be great. I couldn't sell it at a profit. But I then started working with clients one-on-one and working with them directly. And then I started an education channel, my TikTok channel. That was about a year and a half ago. And that's grown really quickly, in part because people are just really hungry for the science of Alzheimer's disease. I'll post videos now and I'll say, look, this supplement, studies show that this supplement or this food can help reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease. And then people will chime in, nothing can prevent Alzheimer's disease. Nothing can help it. It's all genetic. My doctor says, supplements don't work. And this is still it's really unfortunate because it's a myth, not based in science from quote unquote experts or professionals. And and Chris, they're doing what's called the nocebo effect. So the placebo effect, which you're familiar with, is I give you a sugar pill or I give you a whatever, and then I say, this is going to help you. And then you get better. The nocebo effect is you take something and the doctor tells you it's not going to work. So they actually destroy the efficacy of things that work. So here's what works for dementia prevention. We'll go into these more in detail. Diet, changing your diet works. Increasing your exercise works. Improving your sleep works. Reducing your stress works. Cleansing out heavy metals. Removing mold and mycotoxins from your environment. Finding purpose is helpful. Increased hugs is really helpful, believe it or not. Improving your sleep. I don't know if I said that one. And then there's certain supplements that are helpful. There's at least 10. They're shown to be really good in the literature. There's all these things. And still, it's really upsetting. Still, there are quote unquote experts who have letters behind their name that are saying there's nothing to do about Alzheimer's disease. And they're deterring their patients and their clients from doing things that are proven in the science to be really effective.
Ooh, okay. Your passion is palpable. I really hadn't thought about the nocebo effect, right? Like the reality is the placebo effect has a 44% efficacy, right? Like it's just, you have a 44% increase in the likelihood of something actually working, even though it has no value. That's got to be the same number or very similar if the doctors are out there saying there's no solution. Like, and what a disheartening state of affairs to be told like there's no solution when in fact there are, right? Like that. Yeah. That's
when
a
doctor
crazy.
Condemns you to death, which is really what this is. They
With
say, look, there's
Alzheimer's.
nothing you can do. Alzheimer's, there's nothing you can do. Get your affairs in order. They're condemning that person to death, and they're taking away hope, and they're taking away this person's internal healing mechanisms. And there are all kinds of, there's thousands now. There's thousands of cases of people reversing mild cognitive impairment, which is severe memory loss and early stage Alzheimer's disease, from Dr. Dale Bredesen. And then Dr. Heather Sanderson is published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease. There are very credible scientists doing work with hundreds and thousands of patients, showing that there are things that you can do, in multiple things you can do that can help prevent Alzheimer's and reverse Alzheimer's. And it's upsetting that people who are talking to people with these early stage conditions, they're deterring them from seeking that help, and they don't know the science, and it's harmful to our aging populations. It's harmful to our seniors when those who treat them, neurologists and gerontologists, aren't current with the science.
Yeah. All right. So I think we got a little bit ahead of ourselves. I'm going to do another talk, really kind of the nitty gritty of Alzheimer's, right? From a 50,000 foot view, just talk about like, what is Alzheimer's? How many people have it? How likely are you to get it currently? Kind of give us that kind of framework, please.
Yeah, great. So if you want to live to age 80 or 85, this disease is very much on your radar. I don't like the word should. I was going to say should. Ideally, this disease is on your radar because this could impact you. So for those who are 80 years old in the United States, approximately 50% of people will have some form of dementia. That could be Alzheimer's disease. That is the most common. That could be dementia with Lewy bodies. That could be Parkinson's disease. That could be vascular dementia, which is a fancy way of saying stroke. 50% of people have some form of dementia. At age 85, 50% of people have Alzheimer's disease. Doesn't mean they're all going to die from it, but 50% of people have Alzheimer's disease by the time they reach 85. That's today. So if you want to live to age 80 or 85, you want to prevent Alzheimer's disease. It's just that simple. It's going to be a major risk factor as we age. And so just regardless of what your genetics are, it's a risk factor for almost all of us. Now, there's many things we can do to reduce that risk. And the good news is that these also promote optimal health. So the healthier you are overall, the greater your reduction in the risk of Alzheimer's disease.
And hopefully chocolate has something to do with this.
Oh yeah, chocolate's great. Chocolate's absolutely great.
So you talk a little bit about brain aging and then Alzheimer's. Do you consider that there's a difference between those two, and how would you describe that difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Alzheimer's increases with risk as we age. Your question is Alzheimer's normal brain aging? Alzheimer's is not normal. I just recently did an interview with Ari Whitten, and he discussed research from South America, from looking at a very specific tribe that's been studied for their health. They live in a traditional way like our ancestors did 50,000 years ago. They're hunter-gatherers. And these people in this study, people were included from age, I think, 40 to age up to 92. The amount of Alzheimer's in their community, in this tribe, is 1%. And I wish I could cite the name of the study. I just heard this just yesterday. And so 1% of the people get Alzheimer's disease. So it's not a part of their healthy aging. It's not a part of normal aging in this tribe that is living in a way that our ancestors lived 50,000 years ago as hunter-gatherers. And so those two things are different. And what Ari Whitten speculated was that the conditions of the environmental factors of living in our modern world, living a sedentary life, eating all the time, not fasting regularly like our ancestors did, and eating foods that are covered in toxins. I'm here in Mexico right now. They have recently, I think it was in 2021, they made glyphosate illegal. Glyphosate is Roundup. That has an impact. That's a neurotoxin, and that's just a toxin for your body. It creates inflammation. It's not a good thing to ingest. But that's still currently legal in the United States. And so our modern world is a toxic world, and our modern world is a sedentary world. And very sadly, our modern world is an obese world. There's, in the United States, approximately 7 out of 10 Americans are overweight or obese. That's a really awful statistic. And our young people, there are children with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, I believe from drinking too much soda, because that's the primary culprit, because it's got a ton of sugar and no fiber. But children with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and they're going to have very likely have pre-diabetes, and they could have this for their lives. And the high fructose corn syrup and just so much sugar and so many processed foods and bad oils in the modern American diet, the standard American diet, aptly named the SAD diet, SAD, standard American diet, it's really harming us. And so so I would say our environment, our lack of movement, and our lack of poor nutrition, and the terrible nutrition that's causing inflammation, diabetes, and is harming our brain, those are contributing to Alzheimer's disease. Those are very different from healthy aging or normal aging that we would see in a population that lives in a more traditional lifestyle.
So you've got aging, and then you've got kind of this disease, a 1% versus 50%, right? In that tribe, 1% in that tribe, 50% of, you said, people over 85. That's just a phenomenal difference. And clearly they're doing things that are the right things, or just not exposed to the wrong things. I think, it's both, right? You not only want to not eat Twinkies, by the way, I think they're great. Ho-Hos are my favorite though. Remember Ho-Hos? We're in Texas, so a deep fried Twinkie.
Those were great at the Texas State Fair. Those deep fried Twinkies totally hit the spot. They did not good for the stomach, but were good for the 2 seconds they were in your mouth.
And the Ho-Hos too. Yeah, those were good. I haven't had any of those, frankly, in a really long time. And the last time I had a Twinkie, I was like, it's not as good as I remember. I don't know.
They may have changed the ingredients, frankly. That phrase, it's, they don't make them like they used to. Unfortunately, I'm finding that to be true as I get older. I remember things tasting better, things being higher quality. I remember customer service where I'd actually talk to a human. Now I'm talking to AI. It's really interesting. So it's both. So it's not eating the Twinkies. It's not eating the foods. It's not drinking the soda. And then number two, it's also eating the right foods. It's eating a lot of vegetables, getting a lot of fiber. It's eating healthy protein, whatever that means for you.
So
And
if we
so forth.
if we look at like what are the causes of brain aging, kind of this, because that's the next question I jotted down. I mean, part of that answer is just as the brain ages, break apart what you would say is healthy brain aging and what that might look like, and then unhealthy brain aging as it might lead into to Alzheimer's. Like, how do you continue to kind of break those
Great
apart?
question. So healthy brain aging, you really can't tell the difference, right? Ideally, we're getting smarter and wiser as we age. Now, generally speaking, the body and brain do change as we age. For example, hormones change. Women are very familiar with menopause. Men go through andropause, which is a reduction in testosterone. Unfortunately, Chris, as we age, our testosterone decreases. I would like my testosterone to be as high as it was in my 20s. I think I can handle that energy now better than I could then. But testosterone's related to it's related to not only sexual vitality, but also energy, leadership, motivation, cognition. Low testosterone leads to low cognition, low ability to think and make decisions, being able to lead teams. By the way, testosterone, very important for women. Women, you may not know this. Women you have more testosterone in your body than you do estrogen. It's just measured in different ways, using different units. And they did this sample of captains of female athletic teams. The captain of the team has higher testosterone and lower cortisol than non-captains. So testosterone, very important for leadership in women and cognition in women as well, as along with sexual vitality and energy. So our hormones drop as we age. Generally speaking, that's part of, quote, healthy aging. We now have testosterone, and we now have hormone replacement therapy. So if you want to get treated for that, you can go to a doctor and get bioidentical hormones or whatever your doctor recommends. So hormones are a natural thing. Melatonin decreases naturally with aging. Melatonin is a hormone secreted by the pineal gland that's involved in sleep, but it does so much more than that. It's a powerful antioxidant. It has anti-cancer properties. There's research looking at, does this help with Alzheimer's disease? It regulates the sleep-wake cycle. By the way, if you take a melatonin supplement, be very careful. You want to have it labeled. I've made the mistake of taking melatonin during the day because I took it with a handful of supplements. It just ruined my day because I was tired all day long. There was nothing I could do. I drank a bunch of coffee. I took L-tyrosine, which increases dopamine. I took a bunch of different supplements that increase alertness and awareness. I was just tired all day because I just took a huge dose of this hormone that tells my body and brain it's time to sleep. So melatonin decreases as we age. These are natural changes that happen, and you can supplement or you can not. But these what I would call natural aging. And then there are the problems with aging that are associated with our modern environment. So Dr. Brant Courtwright, who wrote a great book, actually, I think I have it right here. It's called Here it is. It's called The Neurogenesis Diet and Lifestyle. So this book talks about, Chris, do you remember in high school where they said you couldn't grow new brain cells?
Oh yeah, that's a fact, right?
That's been disproven. Yeah. In mice, the work of Dr. Elizabeth Gould from Princeton, she's shown adult neurogenesis in the adult of pretty much every mammal, except for bats. I don't know why, but pretty much every mammal can grow new brain cells in adulthood, including humans. And there's this great new book by Brant Courtwright, the Neurogenesis Diet and Lifestyle. It talks about foods that increase the growth of new brain cells. Exercise is one of the very best things. Lion's mane, that's a mushroom that can increase the growth of new brain cells by stimulating growth factors in the brain. And so if we don't use our brain, it will naturally shrink as we age. So this is what he shared with me. He said the times of the greatest decrease in neurogenesis, do you know when there are? There's two of them. The times when the brain shrinks suddenly the most, or neurogenesis, the growth of new brain cells, when that stops most significantly. Do you know when those are, Chris?
So I would guess I think they say the brain's done developing at 25, 28 would be one of those. And then I would have to think, much later in life in the 80s.
You're close. You're in the right time zone. So the first one is upon graduation of college. And the second one is on retirement.
So it's almost not related to age. It just happens to be how our society.
It's correlated with age, but yeah, it's when people stop learning. As a fellow scientist, grad school is just the beginning of the learning. Really, they're giving you the tools because, frankly, a lot of stuff we learned is out of date.
Yeah.
School gives us the tools to then continue learning, and so we don't stop. But people who just go to undergrad, for example, by the way, education, unfortunately, is linked to Alzheimer's disease. People with low education. And there's not a whole lot to do about it because they didn't build up a lot of their brain during, as you mentioned, until age 25. So at age 25, our brain's very plastic. It's growing very rapidly. It's still forming. And so education during those years builds a bigger brain. It builds a stronger brain. It builds more neural connections. And so specifically people of low income, of minority status, at least certainly in the past, people who have low access to education, they have a greater risk for Alzheimer's disease because they didn't have the opportunity or they weren't able to go to school. And they didn't build up the strong neural networks that are going to be helpful to them throughout their life.
I wonder with the education piece, if that's also just they haven't developed the love of learning, right? And so that then later in life, that's not a driving factor.
That's
right?
probably part of it for sure. The love of learning is so important, but a lot of education is access.
Yeah.
And the better schools you have, usually the better teachers. And better teachers make it interesting oftentimes. But I think you're right. It's a combination of both. And so these two times when our brain stops creating new brain cells significantly are when people leave school because I'm done learning. Right. By the way, please don't ever say that I'm done learning because that means your brain's done. You're basically you're giving yourself the nocebo effect. Right. You're saying my brain's done growing.
Replace that with I'm dumb learning.
Yeah, I'm done learning. That's absolutely correct. Yeah, if you're done learning, your brain's going to start shrinking. And then the second time is retirement because people are no longer mentally engaged. And so, if you're close to retirement age, retire into something. So if you're going to leave your traditional work, and I don't recommend doing that if you enjoy your work. Excuse me. I recommend staying at your work as long as you like. My dad is 75. He's a lawyer. I hope he works till 85. I mean, I want him working, not only because it continues to generate income for the family that he and my mother can enjoy, but also because he's out of the house. He's talking to colleagues. He's staying involved socially. He plays golf and tennis and squash with these people to stay active. All kinds of benefits of continuing to work if you like your job. So it keeps the brain active. And so if you're going to retire from work, retire into something. So can you pursue a master's degree or a graduate degree in a field of interest? Find something you're really passionate about. Volunteering is really, really important. Spending more time with your grandchildren. Take something on. Don't just go to retire to the beach unless you're willing to say, okay, I'm on my way out. If you're on your way out, go to the beach and don't do anything. But please keep your mind active and keep your body active. This is why spending time with grandchildren is so valuable because they're great exercise. I love playing with my nephews. They're 3 and 7 now, and so when I'm babysitting them and it's exercise time, I'll have one of them on my back and I'm doing push-ups, and one of them is telling me what our next game is going to be and how we're running around the house. And so kids can keep you really physically active. So make sure you're keeping your brain active after retirement. That'll help keep you in the zone of healthy aging and out of the zone of normal aging in the U.S., which is basically headed towards Alzheimer's disease.
Hey, super quick break from the podcast. Hopefully you're loving it. This is a way you can support the podcast and take advantage of a great offer. We're offering 50% off of one of our MCT bottles. MCT is an amazing oil. Add the ESS 60 molecule to it. It's even more amazing. All you got to do is leave a review on iTunes, send us a notification that you've left that review. We'll get you a coupon code that'll get you 50% off of our MCT oil and free shipping. Back to the podcast.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there. As I was thinking about the questions that I wanted to kind of present to you, one of them was related to the gut biome. We're learning so much about this kind of gut biome, the second brain. Some people have called it this gut biome brain connection. Are you aware of any kind of gut biome Alzheimer's connection?
So what's good for your gut is good for your brain. And what is harmful to your gut is harmful to your brain. And I'm going to paint some really broad strokes here, and I'm right generally. I'm wrong. I'm not precise about the specifics, but you'll get the idea. Anything that improves your memory can reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease. And anything that hurts your memory, anything that hurts your brain, can increase the risk of Alzheimer's disease. For example, people who have a traumatic brain injury, have a head injury, they have an increased risk of Alzheimer's disease. People who have poor cardiovascular health, they're at increased risk of stroke and Alzheimer's disease. If you've had a stroke, that increases the risk of Alzheimer's disease. If your memory is already bad, you're at increased risk of Alzheimer's disease. So anything that is harmful to your brain basically increases the risk of Alzheimer's disease. And anything that's good for your brain and good for your memory reduces the risk of Alzheimer's disease. And so by that, understanding that, a healthy gut is very important for a healthy brain. There's ongoing research that I'm not familiar with about specific gut bacteria and how they relate to the brain. I'll give you something. So alcohol is a big darn deal. Remember alcohol used to be healthy for us? And who at home remembers? Remember alcohol used to be like, hey, drink 2 glasses of wine a night for your heart. That used to be a thing. It still is for some people.
Yeah.
So
maybe that's why the neurons weren't growing back then.
Maybe maybe that's why we didn't have adult neurogenesis. Alcohol does impair the brain's ability to make new neurons. That's not a good trade-off. I recently got a stem cell treatment here in Guadalajara, Mexico. By the way, the treatment I got is cutting-edge technology. You can't get it in the United States. You used to be able to, but not anymore. The laws have changed, and it's really hard to get a high-quality stem cell treatment in the U.S. They told me not to drink alcohol. They told me not to drink sugar because that harms the stem cells and also harms the brain cells. One of the stem cell treatments, I'm basically getting stem cell exosomes in my nose, and that can cross the blood-brain barrier and get into the brain. And so I want to do everything I can to make sure my brain and body are as hospitable, as possible for these new stem cells to improve my brain health and improve my overall health. And so alcohol is very damaging. I learned this from Dr. Andrew Huberman, a neuroscientist from Stanford. He shared some of the damaging effects of alcohol. Number 1, it impairs your gut health. Number 2, it impairs your liver health. Number 3, it impairs your memory. Number 4, it impairs your thinking. It actually turns off part of the frontal cortex, which is involved in executive function, decision-making, higher thinking, but also specifically self-monitoring. And so, Chris, if you and I were sitting here drinking wine, we might say things that would be less socially appropriate, and that,
hilarious, but less socially appropriate. Yeah.
Exactly. How inappropriate, I don't know. But alcohol does that. It loosens the tongue. Well, it doesn't loosen the tongue. It actually turns off part of the brain. Now, the question is, do you want to be in the habit of basically turning off a part of your brain every night when you come home from work and have a drink, or when you sit down at dinner? I don't. And so some people are getting in the habit of turning off this frontal part of their brain that's involved in important decisions. So it's bad for memory specifically. Anyone out lose memory from drinking too much alcohol, or just your memory's impaired from drinking alcohol? Anyone ever go to a class after having a drink and like trying to learn? It's hard. So alcohol impairs memory, impairs brain function. It directly impairs gut bacteria, and it increases inflammation in the body. And so for all of these reasons, alcohol is not a good idea. And then the gut is a big deal. And then the gut-brain connection is also impaired with alcohol. So the gut is very important for gut health is very important for brain health, as well as for reducing the risk of Alzheimer's disease as we age.
Yeah, one of the things I loved about what Huberman talked about, which I was kind of unaware of, is not just like while you're imbibing that, we all are aware of or most of us are aware of the kind of the ability to have that loose tongue, to not have that kind of executive decision making to make good decisions, but that actually carries through to when you're not drinking, right? So I thought that was a little bit profound. Those people who drink regularly actually have that same characteristic even when they're not drinking. And then also the desire for alcohol if you drink regularly. So, if you have 2 or 3 on a Friday and a Saturday, there is this pattern. And I've known that my wife and I will quit drinking at least a month and a half every year. And one year we actually did a full year. And you really do notice, like at one point in our case, we were like, hey, we're not necessarily going out to eat. Like we like that. That's what we're doing. But that first 2-3 weeks were like, hey, we realized we were going out for drinks while we eat. It wasn't going out to eat and having drinks. Like the mindset was very different,
Wow.
and to be aware of that. Yeah, so I
That's
thought
great.
he was really good. You touched on
Hang on, I just want to
melatonin.
comment on that podcast. One other thing that came up that you stirred in my mind was that Andrew Huberman shared that alcohol reduces stress. Yes, in the short term, if you're stressed and you have a drink right now, that'll lower your stress. But the rebound is worse because when the alcohol leaves your system, that stress actually comes back and it's higher, and you haven't used the tools to regulate it. So if you and I get stressed right now, Chris, we can regulate our stress with breathing, probably one of those powerful things. We can exercise, we can meditate, we can get a hug, we can journal, we can do a variety of things. We can pray. If we just numb ourselves with alcohol, which is basically how that's reducing stress, it's probably more complex than that, but that's likely what's happening. The next day, that source of the stress is kind of still there, and we haven't taught ourselves to effectively regulate. This is one problem I have with giving young children ADHD drugs. Outside of the biochemistry of, do you want to give a young child amphetamine? Which is what most ADHD drugs are very close. And I took ADHD drugs as a child. I took Ritalin, I think in 3rd grade or 4th grade. And then I took Adderall in college. I'm still prescribed Adderall. Adderall is amphetamine. When you take a prescription drug to help you with ADHD, oftentimes you're not learning how to self-regulate without the drug. And learning how to regulate ourselves, but not only our attention, but also our emotions is a big darn deal. And it's very hard taking ADHD drugs. Similarly, it's hard to regulate emotions. It's hard to regulate emotions on alcohol, right? I've noticed it's easier to get upset on alcohol than without it, even though it did reduce stress. And then the next day, Andrew Huberman shared that the rebound, there's a stress rebound where the stress is actually higher, and we haven't learned how to regulate it. So there's that negative impact of not regulating our stress in a healthy way, and then it's compounded the next day. So it's almost like a hangover, but it's not a physiological hangover. It's an emotional hangover with alcohol.
Yeah, very true. My son is on ADHD medication, and one of the things that I've worked really hard, and so far we haven't increased his dose, and he's doubled in weight and size, right? So the effective dose is now reduced, and he struggles from time to time, but that's my goal, is that he slowly weans off of that by self-regulating. And I hadn't really kind of thought of it in those terms, but I have conversations with him constantly, like if he misses a day of medication, what does it feel like? How are you controlling? How are you managing, so that he can start to become aware of those things? And you're right.
How old is he?
He is 13 now.
Oh, excellent. And so what grade level is that?
That's 8th grade.
Okay. So it's a really important time academically. And so high school.
He's also dysgraphic. He's also dyslexic. So he struggles with all sorts of things, and he's pushing through all of them, and it's just kind of amazing to see. Very, very
That's
proud
great.
to see that.
I have some supplement recommendations that are also relevant to healthy aging that are helpful with the ADHD. I just want to throw these in here.
Yeah, please.
And we can get into supplements later. These are 2 great ones for ADHD. One is L-tyrosine.
Yep, I've got it at the house.
Great. Yeah. I wish doctors would tell, when they prescribe Ritalin and Adderall, to prescribe L-tyrosine or recommend it, because it's a precursor to dopamine. And so most of these drugs work on the dopamine system, and it's hard. It's taxing on the dopamine system. And so if you took L-tyrosine, you could take less prescription drug, and it would be less taxing on the brain, and it'd be a more natural way of increasing dopamine by taking a precursor. Dopamine's an amino acid, that is naturally found in protein. And the second one, most people haven't heard of this. This one's fantastic. It is called aniracetam, spelled ANIRACETAM. This is a former prescription drug that is now available in the United States without a prescription. It's legal to buy, it's legal to sell, it's legal to possess. It's an unscheduled. It's Schedule 0. So if you're familiar with the scheduling of drugs, for example, marijuana's Schedule 1. They think it's the most dangerous thing ever. The federal government does. Heroin's 1. I think cocaine is 2. Ritalin, Adderall, those are Schedule 2. This is unscheduled, so it's very, very accessible. Most doctors don't know about it because no pharmaceutical company is educating doctors on the efficacy of this. I've noticed when taking this with my Adderall, I'm much more balanced, and less Adderall is more effective because aniracetam works on acetylcholine. This is a neurotransmitter involved in memory, whereas Adderall works on dopamine and norepinephrine. This works on acetylcholine, which is what I like to call the master molecule of memory. It's involved in memory in the memory center, the hippocampus, which is the memory center of the brain. And so it's great for that. Also, it improves mood. It reduces depression. Music is also actually really pleasurable. Like, I'm more likely to get tingles down my spine listening to really good music on aniracetam. It's one of my favorite supplements to take to Burning Man because it improves my memory and improves my mood. And it's really great. You do want to check with a medical practitioner, a pharmacist, or a medical doctor who's aware of it, because it is a form of prescription drug, so it's not necessarily safe for everyone. I take it; it improves memory in healthy adults. And this is really cool, Chris. For those concerned about Alzheimer's disease, in a double-blind, placebo-controlled study out of Italy, 2 groups. One took a placebo, one took aniracetam. The group that took the placebo, they were, all these people had Alzheimer's disease. The group that took the placebo, their memory went down like this over 6 months. The group that took aniracetam, their memory went like this, it leveled off, and then it increased. So by the end of 6 months, their memory is higher than starting point. And these people had Alzheimer's disease. These people were supposed to get worse. And on aniracetam, they actually got better. Not only did they not decline, they actually got better. The placebo group got worse. So aniracetam is very powerful for we don't have a whole lot of data on this, but the studies we have, it looks like it can help prevent Alzheimer's. It might be a good treatment for people with early stage Alzheimer's. And I take it as a healthy adult just a couple times a week. And I found that really improves my learning, my memory, and it improves my mood, and is really great for work. And it's terrific for ADHD.
Wow, that's awesome. So that kind of that last study you mentioned leads into this question, which I think we know the answer, but we've got to ask it. Do you believe Alzheimer's disease can be prevented?
Oh, absolutely. I can name you 10 things that can prevent it. So one of the major risk factors for Alzheimer's disease, and then, I want to give you, the viewer, the power to logic through this, because you are going to hear, unfortunately, you're likely to hear people say there's nothing to do to prevent it. It's inevitable. It's all genetic. Genetics do play a risk factor. That's true. The worst case of genetics is 2 copies of the APOE4 gene. APOE4 gene. There's also the APOE3. That's the normal version, and then there's APOE2, which is newer. So if you have 2 copies of the APOE4, which is a very small percentage of the population, it's like 2 to 5%. If you're in that small minority, your risk factors, your risk of getting Alzheimer's disease is increased by 50%. Now, so that's not deterministic at all. That's still a coin flip chance. Now, if you exercise, it basically negates that. It basically knocks it back down to 0. So regular exercise basically reduces your risk equivalent to the worst genetic risk. That's a big darn deal. So exercise alone can negate the negative impact of genetics. Effective, healthy exercise. So that's really important to know. Reducing the risk of type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes, you've heard Alzheimer's is often called type 3 diabetes. Well, that's true. If you have type 2 diabetes, you're not using energy effectively. And if your body's not using energy effectively, Chris, is your brain using energy effectively? No. And what happens when your brain is not able to effectively use energy? Yeah, it doesn't work as well. And so you're right. So things are going to shrink, so things are going to shrink over the next, if this is happening to me now, they'd shrink over the next however many years, and it's not going to work well today. I'm going to have brain fog today. Have you ever had brain fog like after an exercise? Like I've worked out really hard in the gym, and then I had brain fog because my muscles were using all my glucose to kind of recover.
I've been wrecked where I'll just lay on the floor for like 15 minutes because it was such an intense workout. I don't think in terms I'm not even trying to do anything cognitive. I'm just trying to get to homeostasis at that point.
Yeah, your brain doesn't have the resources to work at that time. Now imagine if that's a chronic condition. Imagine if your brain is chronically deprived of energy. That's a big problem. And that's why there's such a strong association between type 2 diabetes and risk of Alzheimer's disease. So statistically, if anyone argues with you, very simply just say, look, type 2 diabetes increases the risk of Alzheimer's disease. Type 2 diabetes can be prevented. Therefore, a major risk factor of Alzheimer's can be prevented. Another major risk factor is traumatic brain injury, concussion. If you can prevent concussions or not get them, that can help reduce the risk. By the way, if you have a concussion or you've gotten one, it's really important you not get a second one. Same thing with stroke. The most important thing is to not get another one, because the second and third and fourth are even worse. So if you got one skiing, maybe consider, do you want to continue skiing? And if you do, is there a way you can do it where you're really unlikely to hurt your head again? If you got it from a car accident, can you drive in a safer way, or can you ride in the back seat? So limiting second concussions is a big darn deal. Stroke, if you've had a stroke, work with your doctor or your medical team to do everything you can to not get a second one, because a second one is it could be worse than the first, and nobody wants that for you. And so do everything you can, including changes to your diet, to your exercise, to your sleep, whatever needs to be done to not get that second stroke. The second stroke is really, really bad. So these are things that we can all, most people would agree, if we all sat in a room, most people would agree that these can help prevent Alzheimer's disease by reducing the risk, right? Anything that reduces the risk of Alzheimer's disease, I would say helps prevent Alzheimer's disease. Now, does it prevent it 100%? No. As far as I know, in medicine, pretty much nothing is 100%. There might be one or two things. I have not encountered anything in medical science as it relates to humans that is 100%, aside from things that will kill you, like cutting off your head.
Yeah.
But, you give someone a lethal dose of a drug and it doesn't kill 100% of people.
Yeah, still,
right?
Yeah.
And so short of, cutting the head off or removing the heart, there's not a whole lot of 100% things in medicine. Chris, what's your experience with that?
Yeah, no. In fact, I think it's surprisingly low. When you start digging into drugs and their efficacy, it's actually surprisingly low above placebo in order for them to even get on the market, which is amazing. I do want to start kind of wrapping things up here. I think you mentioned earlier melatonin. It reminds me of Dr. Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep. Dr. Matthew Walker is 25 years of experience into sleep research, and what actually drove him there was Alzheimer's. He was researching Alzheimer's and dementia, realized that sleep was incredibly disrupted in those patients, and then now has a whole career in sleep. I don't know if you followed his stuff, and I just find that kind of fascinating.
I've watched numerous podcasts with him. I think he is terrific. He's been a champion of sleep. And sleep is so important for brain health. It's when we make new neural connections. It's when the brain wires itself up. It's also when the brain cleanses itself. There's something that we just learned in the last couple of years about the brain. It's called the glymphatic system. This is like the lymphatic system for the brain. Basically, cerebral spinal fluid flows into the brain to help wash out toxins and plaques that have accumulated over the day. If you don't sleep well, you're going to have higher levels of amyloid plaque in your brain the next day. Amyloid plaque is the hallmark sign of Alzheimer's disease. And so healthy sleep directly impacts your brain health, and anything that impacts your brain health impacts your risk of Alzheimer's disease. And so sleep is so important for the cleansing of the brain and for making those new memories, wiring in those new memories.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That book, I call it the Freddy Krueger of sleep books. Except unlike, from the Nightmare on Elm Street, where Freddy Krueger would scare you out of sleep, this book is so scary, it will scare you to sleep because what happens negatively to you when you don't get enough sleep is just, it's painful to even read. All right. So Dr. Love, how can people contact you if they're interested in following up with you?
So I would suggest following me on TikTok. So that's where I release a lot of free education on TikTok. And then my TikTok is my name, Robert W.B. Love. On Instagram, same name, Robert W.B. Love. And then I put out a lot of free educational content on TikTok. I really hope that's helpful to you if you want to reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease and also slow down the aging process. A fair amount of things that I teach are about slowing down the aging process and potentially reversing aging and getting younger. And then on TikTok is a link where it has different ways to contact me. If I have a really high quality lion's mane supplement line. So if you want to get that's there. If you want to work with me privately, that is also there as well. We start our clients off with a memory test to see where you are, to make sure it's appropriate to work together, and also get clear on what your goals are. And then you can work to schedule your memory test through the links in there as well. And so that's the best way to follow me and get some free information from me. And then if you'd like to engage further, that's the best place to find me.
All right. So I always ask this question: what are 2 to 3 protocols, habits, mindsets? Let's call them shortcuts to longevity and a long health span that you can share? Let's keep this short.
Daily exercise. I'll just tie it into a morning routine. I'll try to give you an answer that addresses all of them. When you wake up, drink a glass of water, fluoride-free water. Fluoride is not good for the brain or the bones. Drink a glass of fluoride-free water, and then if you want, take your morning supplements. I take a magnesium, a selenium, and a vitamin B complex when I first wake up in the morning, along with zinc. Magnesium, selenium, zinc, vitamin B complex. I'm then outside as soon as I can. Being outside in the sun helps set your circadian rhythm. It helps regulate your energy levels. It's extremely important. Morning sunshine, as soon as you wake up, is great. I will then jog for 20 to 40 minutes. And so first thing in the morning, getting that sunshine, getting water, and then getting that early morning exercise. Ideally, we're exercising 20 to 30 minutes of zone 2 exercise, which is a moderate level of exercise that builds endurance. That is great for the brain. And starting your day off with that is what I described as maybe an hour, maybe 45 minutes. Doing that is perhaps one of the very best things you can do to slow down aging and also to reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease. And you will find that getting that early morning sunshine and that exercise in the day, that actually improves your sleep. So that starts this virtuous cycle of good sleep followed by a powerful morning routine of exercise and sunshine, and then good sleep that night. It really gets you in this virtual cycle where you are getting healthier and healthier.
Oh, that's great. All right. So you can find Dr. Love at Robert W.B. Love. That's on Instagram and on TikTok. Follow up with that. Dr. Love, thank you so much for joining us on this summit talk. It's been informative and scary and also really positive. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Chris. This was great.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Live Beyond the Norms podcast. Make sure to subscribe and follow. Also, make sure not to be that guy, the guy sharing this podcast with people who are not interested in living beyond the norms. If you would like to learn more about the ESS60 molecule, the molecule responsible for the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history, a full 90% extension of life, visit myvitalc.com. That's myvitalc as in carbon.com.